I think physicians, and I think all professions, there's something about being coached by somebody who's been through the same thing that you've been through. There's a relationship, there's a relational understanding that's already a given, and you don't have to explain things.
Paging Dr. Cook. Paging Dr. Cook. Dr. Cook, you're wanted in the OR. Dr. Cook, you're wanted in the OR.
Welcome to the Prescription for Success podcast with your host, Dr. Randy Cook.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Prescription for Success. I'm Dr. Randy Cook, your host for the podcast, which is a production of MD Coaches, providing leadership and executive coaching for physicians by physicians. To overcome burnout, transition your career, develop as a leader, or whatever your goal might be, visit MD Coaches on the web at mymdcoaches.com, because you're not in this alone. Well, on today's episode, we're featuring Dr. Dael Waxman. Now, Dael was a guest for episode number 31 of RX for Success, and since that time, he has joined MD Coaches as a part of our coaching team. So we asked him to join me for another interview, this time to tell us more about the coaching experience. So let's hear that conversation. Well, I'm really looking forward to today's episode because I'm going to get to talk to someone that we have had on the show in the past, and that's Dr. Dael Waxman. Dael, it's great to have you back again.
It's great to be back again, Randy. Thank you.
And the last time we talked, you were actually episode number 31, and I think we titled your episode "The Mindful Doc."
Yeah,
episode number 31. So, how do you feel about having that title? Did we get it right?
Well, that's certainly something that I practice and I espouse. I practice mindfulness meditation. There are many other physicians who are doing really great work in bringing mindfulness to medicine. And so it felt a little bit like I was elevated beyond what I am. Having said that, it is something that I think I do bring to the work that I do, largely because I learned from many good teachers and how to integrate mindfulness within what I do. I think there are others that you can interview, and I'll give you those names sometime.
Well, that's fair enough, and I'm not surprised that you're showing a good bit of humility because you always do. But that was certainly the way that you struck me, and I want to invite our listeners who might not have heard episode number 31 in the past to please go back and listen to it because I think you'll find it very interesting. We always talk to our guests about their journey to becoming a physician, and what Dael had to offer was really substantially different from most of the stories. So I think it's worth going back to listen to if you haven't heard it, and even a re-listen if you have heard it. But today, we want to have a conversation about what it's like to be a coach and what it's like to become a coach. I am just absolutely delighted that Dr. Dael Waxman has joined us on the MD Coaches team. He's part of our group now, and we are blessed and honored to have him. And I want to go back for a moment to talk about something that you told me early in your previous interview, and that was that in the beginning, you really didn't have any particular aspirations to be a physician. In fact, you wanted to be in the radio, television, and film business, and it was your dad that prevailed upon you to do something else. Are you happy with your decision?
That's a great question. I just retired from a long career in academic family medicine, so I'm no longer doing clinical family medicine. However, I'm still doing some teaching and, of course, coaching. But that act of retirement allowed me to reflect quite a bit, as those who have retired and have prepared to retire have thought about their career. And, I have to say that overall, I'm glad that I did what I did. And in the end, I don't know whether my father saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, or I just carved out a niche for myself within this world that fit for me. It's probably a little bit of both. And overall, I feel like I really did enjoy what I was able to derive, but also what I was able to give, not just to patients, but also to learners as well. It certainly was feeling like a square peg in a round hole a lot of the time, and that didn't always feel easy. But when I look back on it, it seems to have paid off.
Yeah, that's exactly what I got from our prior conversation. And the interesting thing to me is that you were never seemingly satisfied with the way things were being done. And without being conscious of it, I think you were truly and substantially a disruptor. That analogy that you just mentioned about being the square peg in the round hole, when we talked before, it sounded to me as if early in your experience, you just really felt like either something was not right or you were a little uncomfortable. And I don't know if you foresaw that you were going to bring about some changes, but you certainly have. And I'm wondering if, looking back on it, were those thoughts in your head that there is a better way to do things, and maybe I can be part of that? Was that part of you at all?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have a very clear memory of being between my first and second year of medical school, and I had traveled to Europe and then to Israel, and I was with my brother who was living in Israel at the time. And I remember I have a very clear memory of talking to him about, I am going to be bringing something. I said this, I said, here's what I'm interested in. I think I'm going to be bringing this to medicine. And for me at the time, it was the big, as you heard in the earlier podcast, I didn't think that medicine attended enough to the mental health, the psychological, the behavioral aspects to health and healing and biomedicine. And I remember, and I was very intrigued with that. And I felt like it was really missing, and certainly was missing in my first year of medical school. But it didn't really show up later on very much either. And so, he sort of was like, good luck with that kind of thing. I mean, he wasn't in medicine, but he said, a lot of people get excited about mental health, and then, it is what it is. But I do have a memory of that, and my language about it now. And I just gave a talk to it when I was retiring. My department honored me with a celebration, and I asked to be able to kind of give a talk of, what have I learned over the years? And my language for that is that physicians go into medicine for a wide variety of reasons, and most of us have all of those reasons in that are behind us, all the way from, I like the intellectual challenge, I like the technical challenge, I want to make a difference in people's lives. There's a financial security. All of those are true. And one of them that is often kind of is down on the list is caring, that we really cared, really humanistic. That was all of those are true for me too. But the one that I led with was caring. And I didn't see it a lot, in my training. But that was my choice, is to lead there. And and I think that over the years, that has become a little bit higher up in terms of priority in education.
Thanks to people just like you, I might add.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
I want to ask you, strictly an opinion, do you think medical education is rushed? Do we try to make it happen too quickly?
Yeah. I'm going to say, I'm pausing because I'm going to say yes and no. I think it happens too quickly, but I also wonder about, is the curriculum the appropriate curriculum?
I think that's what I'm getting at, and feel free to take it from there.
Yeah, I'm not an expert on this now, but I'm aware that there are some very innovative curricula in some very progressive medical schools nowadays, and they are focusing on things differently than what you and I focused on early on.
Hmm.
And I think there's also some messaging about the basic sciences and maybe some trimming of some of that to like what's really relevant in clinical medicine. There's also additional things in the curriculum compared to when you and I were there. So if they're packing more in, I sure hope they're reducing other places or extending the amount of time.
Yeah, I think you have to ask, what could you drop out? What did we learn that was not valuable? In my own opinion, is everything was valuable. But I'll give you an example of some serious stupidity. The time that I spent in medical school, the great University of Alabama in Birmingham had decided there was no need to stretch it over 4 years. We'll just do it in 3. And I can't tell you what a struggle that was. And they had the wisdom to abandon that after a 2-year experiment, and they're back at 4 years now. But I have often wondered if it didn't make more sense just to accept the fact that it takes longer. For example, in India, if I'm not mistaken, medical school it's a 6-year course.
Yeah.
And would we have a better chance of helping students not only develop a good scientific basis for medicine, but a more empathetic mindset toward medicine if we just slowed it down? Or is that asking too much of the system?
Again, I'm not as involved in medical student education curriculum. I do know that there's shifts about what are we focusing on here and there. I will say that the students don't seem to be quite as stressed. At least their response to it is not as stressed as I felt that I was during that time. So I don't know whether that's just a quality of the upcoming generation that has a better idea of how to balance things, or whether the curriculum is actually more correct with the way things are. By the way, my brother at the University of Kansas, he also did it in 3 years. They had a few years of doing it 3 years in a row. And, by the time I got there, they're still I went to 4 years, and they were still reeling from all that. I mean, even the faculty were like, I don't know what just happened. And my brother, interestingly, my brother felt like it was way too rushed. And he actually found, I don't know if they do these anymore, but he did a year after those 3 years as what was called an externship. So he worked with a surgeon in a small town, doing whatever somebody who hasn't done internship yet could do after medical school.
Good for him.
Yeah, he needed the break. It was pretty rough. Apparently, a few of them, several people did that.
I actually asked for that. I asked them to please give me another year, and they said, no, not going to happen.
It's interesting. Sure. I know we're not specifically talking about medical education, but, this is kind of relevant with kind of the topic where we're heading, I think. One of the things that was tough for me, and I think it's probably, I'm not alone in this, but in the basic sciences, so now you have a bunch of people who were pre-med who did excellent, and pretty much in the pre-med courses, a lot of us could have taught those courses because we knew it so well to be able to get into medical school.
True.
Then you get into medical school, and then somehow passing, becomes the goal, not, being excellent at it. And I felt like those things were reversed. It's sort of like, how can they, the medical faculty, how can they allow me to go on? And what kind of a doctor am I going to be if I've only gotten 76% of the answers correct? And that was my mindset. And it was really, that was very, very stressful. And it culminated in me taking a leave of absence because I just felt like I need to really rethink this. But I think that speaks to the mindset that a lot of us have. And it does create some challenges later, then as well as later on in our careers, which you and I who are in coaching, we kind of help people examine that and sort of pick up the pieces from that.
Hi, Hi, I'm Rhonda Crow, founder and CEO for MD Coaches. Here on RX for Success, we interview a lot of great medical professionals on how they grew their careers, how they overcame challenges, and how they handle day-to-day work. I really hope you're getting a lot of great information. But if you're looking for an answer to a specific problem, management or administration challenge, or if you're feeling just a bit burnt out, like maybe you chose the wrong career, well, then there's a faster way to get the help you need. No, it's not counseling, it's coaching. RX for Success is produced by MD Coaches, a team of physicians who have been where you are. I know you're used to going it alone, but you don't have to. Get the support you need today. Visit us at mymdcoaches.com to schedule your complimentary consultation. Again, that's mymdcoaches.com, because you're not in this alone.
We'll get back to our interview in just a moment, but right now I want to tell you a little bit about Physician Outlook. If you haven't discovered this remarkable magazine, please do so very soon. It was created by physicians, for physicians, to showcase the intersection between clinical and non-clinical interests, whether it's writing, painting, cooking, politics, and dozens of other topics. Physician Outlook gives a physician perspective. It's available online and in print. It's really unique among physician lifestyle magazines. And like the Prescription for Success podcast, Physician Outlook amplifies the voice of any physician who has something to say. It also engages patients who still believe in physician-led, team-based care. And Prescription for Success listeners can get 3 months free when you enter our promo code RX for Success and select the monthly option at checkout. That's a really great deal on this stunning publication. And now let's get back to today's interview. All these questions so far have been sort of veiled attempts to get you to talk about what we could be doing better. And, you know, when I look at your academic path, I noticed right away that upon finishing medical school and finishing the basics of getting qualified to be certified in family practice, you wanted to do some other things. And I think the first thing on that list was a fellowship in faculty development. If I got it in the right order?
That's correct.
What I'm getting at is it sounds to me that even at that very young age, it looks to me as if you sensed that we weren't doing medical education in exactly the right way, and you wanted to do something about it. Am I misreading it or not?
Well, there's two reasons why I did a faculty development fellowship, and it's a little similar to my brother. After 3 years of residency, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And I was like, I don't think I want to do practice full time, but I don't know what I'm going to do. And the fellowship / chief resident position was my academic advisor had said, "Hey, this is open. We think you'd be pretty good at this. Would you be interested?" I said, "Yeah, that sounds great." Now, having said that, I also, as a med student, I was very motivated to, I just remember kind of the learning by humiliation that was often used, the pimping, if you will, which, I understand some of the reason for it. It's, I think, a little bit of a twist on Socratic method without a lot of compassion. But I do remember very clearly that it felt to me in many situations that what was happening in that kind of rounding pimping was more of an opportunity for the people asking the question to demonstrate how much they knew. And it wasn't of service to the learner. And I remember having I have a very clear memory when I was a third year student saying, if I'm ever in a position to be a teacher, I will not do this. What I will do is I will ask the question, do you, instead of what is the differential diagnosis of X, I will ask, do you know? Because do you know the differential diagnosis? Because that's of service to the learner. I want to assess the learner. I don't want to, it's not about me saying how much I know. So it kind of fit. It was like, this is a great opportunity. I can get into a faculty development fellowship and maybe that's a direction that I can find myself going. And it proved to be accurate. That was it was mostly a decompression year, but it was a great fellowship to learn about the craft of being a faculty member, and I really enjoyed it.
And I think that gives us a pretty good segue into the discussion about coaching. And I'm interested to know when that idea came into your head. When did you first begin to think that becoming a coach would be a good idea? And then how did you go about making it happen?
So we started this conversation with sort of the mindful piece, and I got into mindfulness meditation in 2007, and it was a kind of another layer of my interest in mind-body things. And so I got into mindfulness meditation, and I was reading most of what was in the medical literature about mindfulness. So a partner in my co-faculty member in my department pulled me into his office one day, and he said, I'm in charge of this local primary care update conference for family physicians and mid-levels. And I want you to talk about something because you give good talks. And I said, I kind of feel like I've talked about everything I know to talk about. And he said, well, have you read any good articles lately? And I said, yeah, there's this great article that was in JAMA, this was 2009, that was published about a mindfulness group for primary care clinicians by Ron Epstein and Mick Krasner up in Western New York. And they used mindfulness groups, and then they studied several outcomes. One of the outcomes was burnout. And this is before burnout was a household term in the medical world. And so I was interested in the mindfulness part of it. He said, well, burnout would be a really good topic to hear about at this conference. And I said, I don't know anything about burnout. He goes, yeah, but that'd be a really good topic. So I said, all right, I guess I'll do burnout. I don't know.
No experience required, right?
I said, maybe I'll bring in something about mindfulness. So anyway, I'm preparing for this. There wasn't as much in the literature then. There was enough, but there wasn't as much as there is now. And there's much known about it. It wasn't a household word, as I said. And all the time I'm preparing this, Randy, I was somewhat resentful because I'm like, I don't know anything about this, and I had to talk about this and look like I'm an expert about it. And I put the whole thing together, and I'm resenting my colleague. And then I get there and I present it, and this is 2010, and it touched a nerve of every person in the room. And that wasn't about me; it was really about the topic. And then I said, boy, maybe there's something here. It's touching nerves. People are responding to this on a personal level. And it morphed into workshops and talks. It's the most requested talk I've had anywhere. And of course, I changed it depending on the audience. And all the way to talking to the medical staff at the hospital I'm affiliated with at the time. And people who'd never said anything to me before in the doctor's lounge saying, the talk you gave, that really impacted me. It made me think about, what's going on with me and what's going on with my group. So that led me into saying there's something here, and I ought to be doing something about physician well-being and burnout prevention. And I got onto every committee that there was attending to that in my healthcare system. And really, it became a passion. And I ended up in 2016 at the International Conference on Physician Health. And when I went to this conference, which was in Boston that year, there were just a few exhibitors, as there often are in medical conferences. But 3 of those 6 or 7 or 8 were coaching schools. And I said, what's that all about? What's coaching all of, what's coaching? I mean, I knew a little bit about what coaching was. I'd had a coach earlier in my career for a limited amount of time. But I was like, why is that here in the International Conference on Physician Health? And in some breakout sessions during the conference, there were several physician coaches who in their talks would say, if you are interested in physician well-being and you want to do something about it, we highly recommend that you go get some training in coaching. So I did. So I enrolled in coaching school. I looked at a few, and I ended up in one called the Healthcare Coaching Institute, which was designed by a coaching firm specifically to bring together people from different sectors of healthcare to come together and train together, and maybe from there begin making some needed changes in our healthcare system from a coaching perspective.
This was a face-to-face sort of instruction, or were you doing it remotely?
It was both. We had intensives that were in person. We had 3 of those that were 4 to 5 days long. And then we had virtual training on a weekly basis. And this was over about a year, if I remember correctly.
And once you got your education, as it were, behind you and soon-to-be certification, I'm sure, how did you go about finding clients?
Yeah, well, actually, throughout that, we had to find clients. And that's a great question because when I told people I was training as a coach, people in my department especially said, well, that's kind of what I thought you did anyway. and I said, well, I mean, I get that that's why people come to me for advice and for mentorship and things like that. But coaching really is a little bit different of a model than mentorship and giving advice and being an academic advisor. What I did is people who came to me to get advice, I would say, I'm practicing this new thing called coaching. Can we have this conversation a little bit different of a way using these skills? That's how I got clients, Randy. I mean, that was practice. But then some of those people were my residents. And some of those residents graduated. And actually, a lot of my clients are former residents that I had. I also made it known when I was still in the healthcare system that this is something that I did. And I would get residents from different programs other than the family medicine program where I taught would also be referred to me. And then mostly it's just by people that I knew that I was doing this. And then they would tell people that I was doing this that they thought that they could benefit from coaching. And that's how I got the clients.
One of the questions that I hear a lot is, what exactly is coaching all about? Is this like therapy or something like that? So what's your answer to that? How is coaching different from therapy?
It's a great question and an important question for people to know the distinction. Coaching is a thought partnership that somebody engages in with a coach. And the coach is the thought partner when said person is having a dilemma or they're thinking about doing something a little bit differently, or they would like some input and feedback about how they are doing things right now. It's a thought partner, a person who can hold up the mirror and say, here is what I'm seeing in a reflective listening or reflective inquiry way to assist the person, the coachee, if you will, to be able to develop insight. And then from their development of insight, to then be able to, that coachee, then we see them as a very resourceful, intelligent, smart person who can make decisions for themselves. And they get that insight, then they say, well, I think this is what I need to do. So it's a thought partnership where insight is created. The coach asks a lot of questions and a lot of reflecting. It is not really about giving advice, or it's really not about mentorship. It's not about, when I was in this, this is what I did. It's really about honoring that person, the coachee has the wherewithal, the wisdom. They have the whole resourceful, creative individuals. So that's what coaching is. Another way to think about coaching is there's a rumor out there that the word coaching comes from the stagecoach. And I looked this up, and I've only heard it once, and I didn't see it anywhere else when I looked it up. But I kind of like this. The stagecoach took you from point A to point B. So we're here right now. We're in Alabama right now, and we want to get to New York. And the stagecoach is going to take me from Alabama to New York. And the coach does that too. It's a forward movement. Okay, so the coachee says, here's what I think that I'd like to be different. Here's where I'm heading. And the coach is there to assist them from where they are right now, the current state, to help them get to the future state. The way that's different from therapy, and I'm not going to say coaching, by the way, can be therapeutic, but it's not therapy. And the way that I think about therapy is all the stuff that happens before point A that may be so entangled that it may be difficult for somebody to go from point A to point B. That stuff is what therapists are for, to help disentangle that, to help understand stuff from your background and your past that may be blocking you from moving yourself forward. And so the step before point A is therapy, and that's a very, very simplistic view of it. I want to just honor my therapy colleagues. But for coaching, it's really about forward movement. It's a thought partner to help somebody move forward.
Is it always one-to-one?
It's not always one-to-one. There is such a thing as group coaching. And group coaching is there's a coach, and then there's a group of any number of people up to probably no more than 8 to 12, where those individuals are all kind of working in the same direction. They're interested in something. I did a group coaching session for well-being for residents a few years back. So they were all interested in improving their well-being. And so the power of the group is that there is a little bit of one-on-one time, but the group is also assisting by also offering those reflections and helping the individuals develop insight. There's still forward movement as the individual, but the group energy, also they notice some things that I don't notice as the coach. So group coaching can be a really effective way to move through things as well.
Do you help people make that decision from time to time? I think we're making some good progress here, but a group might be a good fit for you. Is that something that you offer, or do you wait for them to bring it up? How does that work?
The way I've seen it is kind of two separate offerings. There's one-to-one coaching and there's also group coaching. If anything, it's kind of the other way around. Often group coaching will lead to one-on-one coaching. They've learned something and they want to do a little bit more. I know in therapy, it kind of goes in the reverse. People start with a therapist one-to-one, and often they'll say, I think you'd benefit from being in a group. That's the way that I see it, though.
Do you think a physician who is entertaining the idea of being coached, is it important for them to be coached by a physician?
I don't think they need to be coached by a physician. I had a coach who was not a physician. This individual worked in healthcare, and I think that was actually helpful. But having said that, I think that we tend to respond better. We imbue our coaches with some qualities when they have some familiarity with what we do. Mm-hmm. And I want to be careful here because it's real easy, and you and I have talked about this, Randy, it's real easy for those of us who are physician coaches, it's real easy when we have physician clients to drop into giving advice, because that's kind of what we did in our work with
It's hard to resist, in fact.
It's hard to resist. If I consulted you about a patient, you would say, well, here's what you need to do. And if I consulted a colleague about, I'm not really sure what practice to join, they would probably just say, well, go do this one. It's
right.
It's real hard for us physicians to not get into that advice giving piece. But having said that, I think physicians, and I think all professions, there's something about being coached by somebody who's been through the same thing that you've been through. There's a relationship, there's a relational understanding that's already a given, and you don't have to explain things. And so I think that's not necessary, but I think it helps a lot of physicians when they select a physician.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And unlike psychotherapy, where there are patterns of pathology that are recognizable to a psychiatrist that needs specific intervention, when you're talking about coaching, it's an entirely different idea about what the nature of the problem is and what options there are to approach the problem, and to be in the presence of someone who has had a similar experience with education and development and day-to-day life. You can't help but think that there is an advantage there.
Yeah, I think the word credibility comes up, and you've walked in my shoes. So even if you didn't walk in my specific shoes, we all have been in this tribe of the culture of medicine, and we understand, when you and I were talking earlier about medical school, we understand each other, what we mean by that. And so whether that is relevant to the coaching or not, it usually isn't, but somehow that bonds us, and I think it creates some increased effectiveness in the coaching relationship.
Well, Dael, I have really enjoyed picking your brain, as it were. That's one of the reasons that I do Prescription for Success. I just like to talk to people about what their life is like, and I have really enjoyed this conversation. But part of the reason for having you here is because we want to let our audience know a little bit more about what coaching is all about and how they might benefit from it and how they might get started in the experience. So as I do in all of our Prescription for Success recordings, I'm going to get out of your way for as long as you want to take the mic and give you an opportunity to talk to the audience without my interruption about things to look for in a coach. So audience, listen carefully. This is Dr. Dael Waxman talking about things you should look for in a coach.
Thank you, Randy. Well, before I kind of list things to look for in a coach, I just want to invite people to think about, what are some reasons why to engage a coach? And I'll just keep it simple. Every physician I know of, every healthcare professional I know of, wonders or struggles at times between improvement of their professional lives as well as their personal lives. And a lot of folks that we're seeing these days struggle with the tension between the two. Some people are leaving prematurely because they haven't worked through those particular dilemmas and struggles. And so if those are happening to you, where you're just having some professional fulfillment issues, I'm not fulfilled in what I do, and I'm not doing the personal things that I'd like to be doing. My personal life is suffering as well. Those are great reasons for coaching. There's the great resignation that we're hearing about, and we're seeing a lot of that in healthcare, obviously, these days. I think this is also an opportunity before leaving is to actually think about renewal. What we're seeing, us physician coaches, what we're seeing in the people that we are working with, there is definitely burnout. There's definitely disillusionment. There's definitely this sense of, and I see this a lot, I don't really want to stay in this anymore. I want to leave. And what we do in coaching is we kind of help people come back without saying, yeah, you should leave. We come back to, what are the reasons you got into this in the first place? What are the things that drive you? What are you passionate about? What are those things that you went into medical school for? What did you go into your profession for? And we explore those. And are there some other options for ways and for you to live those particular pieces out in your life going forward? So I really wanted to say that because that's a lot of what's going on in the healthcare culture these days. And it's a prime example of what coaching could be helpful for. So having said that, listeners may be asking, how do I decide on a coach? A lot of coaches will offer a complimentary session. And that's a way for you to get a feel for how they work, a little bit of a feel for how coaching is. So if you do that, things to be looking for are they a good listener? I mean, it sounds kind of obvious, but are they listening really well to you? And the way you'll know that is because you're feeling like you're being very, very heard. But even underneath that is, do they care about you? Are they caring about you and what you're experiencing, what your challenges are? Do they hear you and say, yeah, I really hear how challenging that is. And I'm hearing what you care about, what creates passion for you. So let's us talk a little bit about how we can create that for you. Number two is professionalism and the kind of things that they're going to behave like in that complimentary session or when you go to their website. Is it professional? Are they timely? Do they have very good boundaries? Are they not? They're talking about naming other clients. There's no HIPAA laws with coaching, but there certainly are some ethics. Are they professional? Because if they're not professional on their website and in their interactions with you in a complimentary session, they're probably not going to be in the coaching relationship either. Number 3, a very significant one of the things that really differentiates coaching is that coaches are coming from what's possible. They are going to be asking you questions with a lot of positive energy. There's a lot that comes from, in coaching theory, that comes from positive psychology. And so they're going to be asking you things and be focusing on things that you are bringing up that are of a positive quality. So do they bring a positive energy? Do they bring a sense of what's possible for you? Do you leave that complimentary session or any interaction with them feeling a little bit better, more hopeful about what your future is going to be like? And then finally is experience. So a lot of coaches have on their web pages testimonials. So look and read those testimonials and look and see if there are other people like you in your profession. Look for, it sounds simple, but look for happy clients. When you're interviewing coaches, ask them about the kind of clients that they've had, not necessarily the types, but what are some of the challenges that that they have dealt with and helped people with. I was a little surprised when people were asking me that, but I'm glad that they did when they're interviewing me. Like, what kind of people have you worked with? What kind of things have you helped people move themselves through? And how have you helped them? And how are they doing now? Without naming any names, of course. So do they care? Are they professional? Do they exude a positive energy? And what is their experience? And what do the testimonials say? And those are my thoughts.
That's a great wrap up. And I think you have told the story how to make the search pay off for you. Dael, it's been great talking to you. We, of course, on our coach meetings, every week we get together and I enjoy those conversations, but I really get a rush when I have the opportunity to get somebody one-on-one and really get to ask them what's in their head. And I appreciate you taking the time for me today. Before we go, I want to give you an opportunity to tell the audience how to find you through MD Coaches and any other avenue that you'd like to tell us about.
Well, I think the best thing to share with the audience is to find us on the MD Coaches website.
mymdcoaches.com. That's right.
That's the best way to get hold of us. We all have emails there too, and you can contact me directly through email as well as Randy, as you already know. But we're all there, and that would be the way to connect with us.
And we would love to have all the audience members check us out and inquire. There's obviously no cost for that. And please take advantage of the opportunity to look over the website and check out the possibility of coaching if you have even the remotest interest. Dael, thanks again for taking the time with me today. It's been a lot of fun, and I really do appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Randy. Take good care.
Thank you so much for joining us today. As always, we really appreciate a review from you, and a 5-star rating helps us a lot as well. These ratings give our show much more visibility, and they help us reach more listeners as well. And if you'd like to access exclusive content, head on over to our Patreon page, where you can see membership-only material, including personal rapid-fire Q&A sessions with our guests and more. Never want to miss a future episode? Just visit our website at rxforsuccesspodcast.com to subscribe. And while you're there, you can offer your very own prescription for success as well. As always, special thanks to Ryan Jones, who created and performs our theme music for the show. And remember, be sure and fill your prescription for success with my next episode.